I had a third C cardiac calcium scan. I had a third one. That was last week. Okay. Are you ready for this? It went from 33.
Geek, how did you find carnivore?
Dave, thank you for asking. Let me think now. 3 years ago, I reached a metabolic state and such an unhealthy state that I started to experience metabolic and health issues that just knocked me for a loop. I've always been active as a elite athlete and doing multiple sports, and yet I started to, and this was at 67 years old. I'm now 70, but I started experiencing these issues, such as I started to lose, uh, it was localized alopecia. I started to lose hair on one side of my mustache. Blotches of hair would stop growing on my face. And then I noticed patches of hair missing on my legs, and I'm like, what's going on? So I had that issue. I had ulcerative colitis. I was diagnosed by Mayo Clinic to have ulcerative colitis, and I started off with taking a medication for that didn't really work. They ended up putting me on a biologic called Entyvio, which are infusions. So every 2 months, I would have to go to the hospital and sit in the oncology department, even though I don't have cancer, along with the oncology patients, getting my infusions. And the colonoscopy that they did said that, hey, my colon, there are no tumors or growths, but it's inflamed. And the Entyvio put me in check. It did a good job, but I had that, and then I had the typical autoimmune issues along with the missing localized alopecia. Oh my goodness, I had frozen shoulder syndrome. We didn't know it was really autoimmune. We didn't know what the cause was. We knew what the effect was, but the causation wasn't there. And so I had that. I was suffering from aura migraines, and I had one episode of aphasia, a migraine-induced aphasia, which is where you're not speaking right. It's not like a stroke where you're not slurring your words, but I couldn't read anything. I could see the word, but I didn't know what it spelled. I couldn't talk. All my words sounded weird. That lasted for about 30 minutes and scared the heck out of me. But I experienced that constant all my life, bleeding gums. I had, which I kept in check, but I knew I had body odor and foot odor and bad breath. Um, and then I was experiencing arthritis in my knuckles, in my wrists, in my hips, and in my big toe joints. Not like gout, but definitely osteoarthritis. Um, I mean, I can go on and on with all the issues. I can't think of them off my head. I didn't write any notes down, but I had all these issues, and I happened to catch a video online of Joe Rogan interviewing Michaela Peterson. And when I saw the autoimmune and the plethora of issues that Michaela was going through, oh my gosh, it was like, I can relate to this. Obviously, my issues weren't nearly as bad as hers. I wasn't having any issues that had anything to do with my psyche or mental issues. Was I depressed? Not in the terms of clinical depression, but I was pretty down that my body was deteriorating. My normal weight back then was 168, and I went up to 198. What I haven't shared with you yet, that I just want to share with everybody, all my life, I have been eating not just a sad diet, SAD, Standard American Diet, but I was compulsive, obsessive carbohydrates. And I knew that I was a sugarholic. And on top of that, I've never drank, never smoked, never drugged. But I finally came to the conclusion 3 years ago, uh, and I kind of knew it because back in the day, I could never stop at 2 cookies or eating 3 cookies. I would go out and I would buy a whole roll of chocolate chip cookie, cut it, put it in the oven, sprinkle more chocolate morsels on them, and when it was done, eat the whole thing. I could never stop at just 1 quart of ice cream. I would have to eat the whole quart. Uh, just to give you an idea of my compulsive obsessiveness, I would go to the store and buy a jar of Smucker's hot fudge. And what you do is when you get it home, you take the cap off and you put it in the microwave and you heat it up and then you pour it on your ice cream. Well, forget about the ice cream. I'm just going to take the hot fudge and I would eat the whole jar. And so I knew from years ago that I was addicted to sugar and compulsively. I couldn't stop. I would eat table sugar. I would take a bottle of honey and just drink the honey. And it would make me feel better. But then 4 hours later, I would be back eating, food. So 3 years ago, I saw Michaela's and Joe Rogan's video, and I said, I have nothing to lose. It's my mortality. And so I'm going to start looking at one video led to another video. And from Dr. Bright to Dr. Chafee, Dr. Berry, oh my gosh, there's so many doctors that I follow. Dr. Nadar Ali, all these doctors, I started studying and researching this. I didn't go in with my eyes wide shut. And I educated myself and I said, not only am I going to do this, but for the first 2 years, I'm going to get a blood test every 6 months to appease myself, to make sure that I'm not getting worse, because how can you eat? Oh, by the way, I went strict carnivore. So all I was eating was ruminant fat meat. I was eating just egg yolks. I was eating lots of butter and lots of sardines and salmon. I eventually went strict lion diet, but at this time, and so I knew that I was getting nutrient dense food, but I wasn't sure about things like um, uh, iodine, vitamin C, all the things that, how can meat give you that? And so I started spending a lot of money on blood tests, on tests that normal doctors won't, they won't order them. And that's a topic for another conversation as far as big pharma, big food, and the ignorance. It's not the doctor's fault, but anyway, to prove to myself that what's going on. And the first blood test that I got, my fasting insulin. Oh, I didn't tell you, I was also a type 2 diabetic. I became diabetic, type 2. And I had some tingling and numbness in my feet as well. I mean, so many symptoms. But and I did a blood profile to get a base marker to find out where am I now. And my glucose was 8 something. My fasting insulin, I found out I was hyperinsulinemia. My C-reactive protein for inflammation was off the charts. I can go on and on and on. Oh, my liver function was functioning at the same level of an alcoholic's liver. My AST and ALT were up around 50 and 60. and not even close to the normal ranges. So anyway, I did strict carnivore. I'm kind of lucky. Because I did so much research, I knew that uh, I'm going to be. I knew about the gallbladder and the liver. I did a lot of research on this, and I knew that based on what I was eating, my liver was basically hibernating and not producing the bile that it should. And I knew that because now I'm eating no carb, zero carb, and lots of fat. And for the first 3 days, I had, let's just say that it was an experience. And I knew it was just a matter of time before my liver would say, oh, well, you're not getting enough bile. Let me wake up and let me ramp up and start producing all of these, all the things, and my gallbladder storing that and everything. So within 3 days, the diarrhea stopped, and I went from diarrhea because I backed the fat down and had one episode of severe constipation. In my 70 years on this planet, I've never had constipation. And that was an experience. And then I was able to modify and adjust what my fat intake is over a couple of weeks. And there was no looking back. To make a long story short, some of the research that I did had to do with my coronary arteries because my dad passed away at 54 years old on the tennis court. He was a semi-professional athlete. You would never know by looking at him that he was in incredible shape. And the autopsy report said that he died of a left descending coronary occlusion, a plaque, and cholesterol blockage, which I'm going to comment real quickly on. And so I was scared about that. So I ended up getting a CAC score. And my first CAC score wasn't as bad as I thought. I was 67, and it was 180, which is mild to moderate chance that I could have a heart attack later on. And so the research that I did with a couple of carnivore cardiologists, um, Dr. Dr. Avadia and Dr. Nader Ali, talked about cardiac arterial calcium score scans, and that there's really been no substantiated proof that you can reverse it, kind of a thing. But what you can do is it won't get any worse. And what I learned is the normal aging process, most people are zero, which is no arterial calcifications. And once you hit 40, 50 years old, even if you're eating well, there will be a natural occurrence of some calcification, but not to the point of being in any danger category. But they did say at least it won't get any worse if you are producing ketones and you've lowered your insulin being a mother hormone, and my sex hormones, my testosterone, not excluding progesterone and uh, testosterone and what's the other female hormone? It's escape
Estrogen.
estrogen. Thank you. And then you have your pituitary gland. You've got your hypothalamus. You've got your thyroid, your parathyroid. All of my hormones were completely messed up. Why? No fat intake for most of my life. And no thanks to Dr. Ansel Keys back in the 50s. He was the one that helped President Eisenhower in regards to Eisenhower's heart attack. And he became famous because of that. And then he actually was asked to write the standard American food pyramid, in which he established you want to eat high carb, low fat, or no fat. And since then, people have gotten sicker. Heart attacks, kidney disease, and cancer rates have gone sky high ever since then. And when you think about it, saturated fat is animal fat is the magic ingredient. And we would not have been on this planet this long if we weren't eating those things, ancestrally speaking. But so I went in for my second blood test, and I had a DEXA scan. And the DEXA scan showed that I had some visceral fat, a little bit less than normal, but evidently my physical activity in sports have kept that to kind of a minimum, but it was there. And over a period of 2 years, I've had these scans and these blood panels. And to bring you up to date, every single one of all my metabolic health issues, my medical health issues that I aforementioned are gone. They're gone. Ulcerative colitis. I went to my gastroenterologist, who wasn't a Mayo doctor. I had moved then. And I told him what I wanted to do. And he said, we can try it for 3 months. We'll do a special blood test to make sure that your markers are where they need to be. Because if it doesn't work and they try to put me back on Entyvio, that biologic, there will be enough antibodies built up that I'll reject that medication. So 3 months later, the doctor said, you're not in remission. It's like you never had the disease. Your colon has no apparent residual of anything. Your colon looks like it should for someone younger than you. So evidently, and I failed to mention this, I was also eating artificial sweeteners, all the preservatives, and my colon was basically waving a white flag. So with all that said, I'm trying to give you the Reader's Digest version, but with all that said, my blood markers are incredible. Off the top of my head, my glucose is 82. My fasting insulin is 2.5. My C-reactive protein is 0.1 or something. There's no inflammation in my body. Everything is just like working incredible. And so I went in for, this was a little over a year ago. I went in for my second calcium cardiac scan, my second CAC scan. And it went from 168 down to 33. And I'm like, are you sure this is right? Is this not a mistake? Based on my research, and I hope that your viewers, if they're educated in this area, maybe they can respond and let me know. Am I the only one that's seeing this, that has experienced this, or have other people lowered their CAC score through the gut, on a fatty meat only diet? So that was a revelation. I was like, that was an epiphany for me. So I'm wondering, was it a mistake or what? I don't know. But anyway, my cardiologist, and I don't go to a cardiologist because I need to. I have no heart issues, but I go because he was the only doctor that doesn't put people on statins, meaning he doesn't look at that as a knee-jerk reaction. And Dave, you know that you've got big pharma and they're pushing these medications. Doctors are not they're not nutritionally trained or doing really proper profiles to where they want to find the root cause versus just take care of the symptom, kind of a thing. And I was shopping for doctors, and I heard through another doctor that this cardiologist looks at the keto way. And when I first interviewed him, I said, if my cholesterol is high, are you going to put me on a statin? He said, it depends, but he didn't know much about carnivore. But to make a long story short, he did have a knee-jerk reaction. And what I haven't shared with you is LMHR. LMHR, okay? For your viewers, that stands for lean mass hyperresponder, which is a very select group of people, a Geno group, that when lowering your carbohydrates and increasing your fats, lowering your inflammation and your insulin and your glucose, it raises LDL and total cholesterol. So I was kind of prepared, but I didn't know I was a lean mass hyperresponder. Let me tell you real quickly, I'll pull this up. I got my cholesterol markers, and I think that I am competing with a lot of people. Let me give me 1 second here. This was last week. Total cholesterol, 541. LDL cholesterol, 350. Non-HDL cholesterol, 447. Now, I've learned I'm already on the bandwagon. Total cholesterol means nothing. LDL. Now, we know there's small particle and fluffy particle, or dense LDL. And at first I was thinking, well, your large fluffy particle, good LDL, small density, bad. But now they're saying LDL in general, don't even look at. Okay. So what you want to look at is your A1C, your CRP, and your insulin levels, and your HDL and your triglycerides. My triglycerides, they are normally around 90. They're a little high now. They're still in normal, 115. But here's the kicker. My HDL is 94, and most progressive cardiologists or epidemiologists know that you can get your HDL to triglyceride ratio by dividing your triglycerides and your HDL into your triglycerides. And if it's under a certain figure, that means that the chance of you having a heart attack is practically zero, and that you're in incredible health and all of that. My ratio is like 0.1. It's like barely there. So some patients that I've seen have a HDL of 82 and a triglyceride of maybe 80. And even though the triglyceride is better, the HDL is not as good as mine, it still works out to where my ratio is better than someone with something like that. And yeah, they're all right there. So, and my last DEXA scan, my visceral fat got even less. Yes, I'm doing sprints and I'm doing CrossFit, a lot of handstand push-ups, a lot of dips, a lot of pull-ups, a lot of that kind of stuff, and ballistic type lifting and sprinting. So that helps a little bit. But I had a third C cardiac calcium scan. I had a third one. That was last week. Okay. Are you ready for this? It went from 33 to 0. 0. And I talked to the radiologist. I actually called back and I said, are you sure of this? Is this a mistake? Now, my cardiologist hasn't seen it yet. And again, the only reason why I go to a cardiologist is because he understands carnivore more than any of my other doctors, and he lets me do my thing. He sees the kind of shape I'm in. I took a fitness versus life or chronological fitness test, which was answering a bunch of questions and then doing some physical, what they call FTP, output performance type things. And I came out to a 41-year-old fitness-wise, even though I'm a 70-year-old. So I don't feel 70. Honestly, I feel 34, 35. There's nothing I can't do. Is it genetics? It might be. My dad died at 54, but my mom is 97. She's a smoker, 97. She doesn't smoke. She smokes 6 cigarettes a day. I don't know how that compares to the average smoker, but she's losing sight in one eye. But other than that, she gets around really well. She doesn't need anything. Sometimes she'll use a walker because she doesn't have a lot of peripheral vision. But I feel great, and that's my motivation, is that I feel great. So the main thing I wanted to share with you and your audience is, and I hope your audience will respond to this, is there any research or any documentation that says that a CAC score can actually go from 168 to 0? Now, the only supplement I take is K2, And the only thing I can think of is the lack of inflammation in my body now. And the other thing I wanted to share with you is cholesterol is good. And I want to talk about my dad real quick. The autopsy report showed he died from a cholesterol blockage in his coronary artery. If my dad died today at 50 years old, and the right doctor, or looked at his arteries, this is what they would have said. Of course, medically speaking, they would have said it wasn't the cholesterol blockage that caused the death. That wasn't the root cause. He ate protein, but Dad ate carbohydrates all his life. If there's such a thing as healthy carbohydrates, and I don't believe there is, but he would eat lots of healthy fruit. I say healthy. I'm not going to say that. He would eat a lot of fruit, a lot of veggies, a lot of starches, along with his meat. The typical standard American diet. Maybe this much carbs, this much starch, and maybe that much protein, whatever. And he was a semi-professional athlete. He was also a CEO of a major corporation. So he had a lot of stress in his life. So I'm sure his cortisol levels were sky high. But the autopsy report would have shown that he also, and it did say, abrased something interior wall of the descending coronary artery. In other words, that coronary artery was so inflamed. Well, what happens is, when there's any inflammation in your arteries or throughout your body, let's talk about cholesterol, metaphorically speaking, would be like a firefighter, right? And the fire that a firefighter has to put out, let's call sugar. We can call it glucose, sucrose, or fructose, but it doesn't matter. You eat a piece of fruit, and your body is going to convert it to one of the three. So it doesn't matter. There's no such a thing as a healthy carb. Your body doesn't differentiate. It breaks it down to glucose, fructose, or sucrose. And if you get enough of it over a long period of time, it's going to cause inflammation. And boy, was there inflammation in that artery. So what does the cholesterol do? The cholesterol are the firefighters. That glucose that caused that damage is what caused the inflammation. Now your cholesterol in your endocrine system is going to recognize, oh, there's inflammation here. I need to get to there to repair it. It needs to be repaired. That's what cholesterol does. So what happens is, you've got all these firefighters going to try to put out the fire, and there wasn't enough firefighters. If you've got 10 firefighters trying to get through one door, you're going to end up with all these people trying to get through one door and clogging the door. So cause and effect, causation, the root cause was inflammation. The cholesterol was trying to heal it. So in my case, or anyone else's case, if the damage is not that extensive, based on the CAC score, that stuff, it can heal it and rid it possibly. Now, CAC scans don't tell you if the artery has been narrowed. It just tells you if there's calcification blockage. And it was clean. Quite a few years ago, I had a It was a radiology. It was a nuclear stress test. And what they do is they inject a nuclear substance in your body, a tracer. And you get on the treadmill and you run for a certain amount of time. And you get up to like 85, 90% of your predicted maximum heart rate. And then they immediately take you off the treadmill, no cool down, and you lay on this machine. And they've already injected the tracer in you. You lay down and the machine scans and it can see some other possible modality, possible issues. And that scan was clean. So anyway, the only damage that has taken place that is permanent that I know of is the fact that 5 years ago, I had before I became carnivore, I had a serious upper respiratory infection. Didn't know if it was bacterial or viral. But usually when I get sick, I'm only sick for maybe a week and I heal pretty quickly. I was sick for 2 months. In other words, I had an infection. You can tell. I had an infection. I was coughing up things and I was coughing a lot. About the 2-month mark, I started to get better. But previous to that, I went to a walk-in clinic. They gave me antibiotics. To make a long story short, I ended up with a serious condition called viral vestibular neuritis. Your vestibular system is the balance center of your ears. You've got your middle ear for hearing and your inner ear for balance. And I found out I lost all balance in one ear and I couldn't balance or walk. And I was basically a vegetable when it comes to balance. I couldn't do anything. And today I'm not healed from it. But what has happened is my physical therapy and the fact that I was a gymnast and I was doing my own therapy, the information from my left ear to the brain, that nerve was completely burned out and compromised. It wasn't bacterial, it was viral. And that virus attacked that nerve and compromised any information from that balance center to my brain. And so we know that nerves will regenerate, but not in our lifetime. We would have to live longer to see any kind of improvement. Most of the time. But I'm the only one that knows I have the issue because every now and then I could be standing up and all of a sudden I'll kind of lose my balance, but I just take a step backwards or a step forwards. It just looks like I'm just kind of moving around. I'm fine. So I have to visually see what I'm doing, but it doesn't affect me in any way in any activity or any sport. The reason why I bring this up is no one's going to tell me anything different. I'm convinced that back then, all the sugar that I was eating fed that virus. And I've learned that viruses, cancers, tumors, whether they're benign or they're malignant, guess what? Sugar is fertilizer to cancers and tumors. And I'm convinced that that nerve became so inflammation and then damage. And if I wasn't a sugarholic and I don't think that would have ever happened. No one will convince me otherwise. But that's how important it is for people to understand that it doesn't matter if it's a carbohydrate, your body's going to convert it to. Now, some people have a better tolerance for consuming a little bit more grams of carbohydrate. If I look at a carbohydrate, I'm going to gain weight and I'm going to start to feel bad. I know that some people can eat 10 grams of carbohydrate, which I believe is ketovore. Under 20 grams of net total carbs is keto. But I can't do that, nor am I ever going to try a carbohydrate. It's easy for me to stay strict line or strict carnivore like a Michaela Peterson because I'm in fear of these things coming back. And I've come so far that I don't have any motivation to do any of that.
Well, Congratulations on such awesome results. So
You.
you the A1C, your A1C is normal now, right?
Yeah, my A1C, it
No.
went up slightly. It was 5.1 and it went up to 5.4. That doesn't bother me. From some of the doctors that I've seen on YouTube, uh, sometimes what will happen on a carnivore diet long term is your as long as your everything is in balance, sometimes your A1C might go up 1 or 2 points. It's not because, and I'm not eating any glucose, I'm not eating any carbs. So what's causing it? I don't know. There's a reason. I don't remember what that reason is, but it's nothing to even think about. Um, I'm, yeah, that's, those are great numbers. Those are great numbers.
Yeah, really nice. So how are you eating day to day?
Sometimes I'm OMAD, and which is 1 meal a day. Sometimes I'm 2 meals a day. It just depends how I feel. I don't count calories. I just go by how I feel. I try not to eat too early in the morning if I'm going to eat in the morning, because everyone's insulin level spikes in the morning when you wake up. It's a biological human function. But I'll eat, if I eat 1 meal a day, I won't eat around until 12, 1 o'clock. And I'll eat uh, a 1 pound uh, Wagyu 60/40, meaning 40% fat, which you can't get in local stores. I ordered through a cattle farmer, wonderful business called Ozark Valley Wagyu Farms, uh, upstate, out west, up north. And so I'll have a 1 pound burger, or I'll have a 1 to 2 pound ribeye, and then I won't eat again until I'm hungry, and that might be 2 days later, or it might be 24 hours later. Uh, it just depends, and um, yeah. And then the other thing I want to just share with everybody is uh, I want to make sure that your audience knows the difference between constipation and frequency. And I'm at the end of the spectrum. When I say this, your audience reaction is, oh my God, you better go see a doctor. My frequency of going to the bathroom is anywhere between 8 and 15 days. 8 and 15 days. Am I constipated? No. When it's time for me to go, it just comes out normal and everything's great. And I'm out of the bathroom within 1 to 2 minutes. I think that's because of two things. When you're eating a super nutrient dense diet, everything you're putting in your body is using. There's no waste, right? You're using it. If I was eating fruit, I would probably get rid of most of that fruit because there's very few nutrients in it and it's all fiber. And if your body sees something that doesn't have a lot of nutrients, it'll grab what it can and it'll say, I can't digest this, so I'm going to let it go. I'm not doing any of that. So it just depends. Now, that's one thing. I'm just using everything I'm putting in me. The other thing is I exercise. Sometimes I exercise high intensity. Sometimes I exercise moderate. So when I'm not exercising, I'm still, burning or using the ketones and the fat. So I think it's a combination of the two. But it just depends. Sometimes I visit the bathroom once every 5 days, sometimes every 12 days. Does it bother me? No, because I have no problem going to the bathroom. So make sure you understand the difference between how frequently you're going versus are you blocked up, right? I'm not blocked up, and I don't have the other issue.
Yeah.
So, and I talked to my gastroenterologist, and he raised his eyebrow, but he said, "No, you're absolutely right. If what you're eating is so nutrient dense and providing your body with everything it needs, there's nothing to get rid of. I guess it's kind of like I kind of like being an athlete. It's like driving a sports car that has an economy button. So when you need the power, uh, you're burning all that fuel up because you're using it. But then again, you may not need to visit the gas station very often when you put it in economy mode because you're burning it very efficiently. How's that for a metaphor?
Yeah, nice. So just on the exercise you mentioned,
Yes.
I had one question that you talked about a handstand push-up. What is
Yes.
a handstand push-up?
It's when you kick up to a handstand. So so you're in a handstand. Make believe I'm upside down, and you lower down to here, touch your nose to the ground, and then push back up to the handstand. That's a handstand push-up. And yes, it gives you definitely gives you muscle.
I'm feeling tired just thinking about that.
Yeah. There's not really any room here for me to kick a handstand, but take my word for it. Yeah. Now,
And
my
just to
age,
clarify again, you're
yeah,
70 and you're doing handstand push-ups.
I turned 70 on May 24th. And now, when I was younger, I did my handstand push-ups away from a wall. So I was balancing doing it. Today, I kick a handstand against the wall so I don't have to balance, but I'm still going all the way down and all the way up. Yeah. I have a set of, they're called parallettes or parallel bars. And I use those to do my handstand push-ups. And so, yeah.
That's impressive. That is
Thank you.
really impressive.
Thank you.
Um, how has your family reacted to this? This has been quite a journey for you.
For some odd reason, if I was a doctor and uh, and I was trying to give advice to my family, they wouldn't listen. They wouldn't listen because I'm family, right? There's something about being a family member that you like. Here's an example. My daughter is she's 30 years old, and uh, she I would love to see her do carnivore. She's pretty active. She does power walking. She does a lot of yoga, and she does some basic calisthenics. And she's and I. The best way to advise people is to let them see what you've gone through instead of trying to say you should do this. Uh, and quite a few of my friends have looked at me and said, "My God, what a transformation!" Uh, you know, tell me how to do it, and I tell them, and they don't change. Now, there's a reason. Same thing with family. So, my son is carnivore, not strict, but he went carnivore. But here's the thing: my daughter and her husband are raising two kids, and God bless them. They were brought up back before I knew anything about uh, uh, going high fat, low carb. So I wish I could go back in time and change all of that. But so I respect the fact that they're going to do what they want to do. I know that I will agitate her if I keep talking about it. She knows, she sees. And at one point, she did some keto for a while, but it was hard for her to sustain that if she's the only one doing it. And yet, she's raising her kids in the standard American diet realm. She does do a pretty good job of cutting back on things, right? She will reduce things and make sure their kids are getting really whole food. But it's very difficult for people these days to do what I did unless they see their mortality and they see it, the fact that, oh my God, I've got all these medical issues, I'm on all these meds, The meds are only treating the symptoms. The meds are making me actually feel worse. That doesn't happen until you've lived a lifetime of having the way you eat build up in your system to the point where you can start having all these issues. That shows you how resilient the human body is. I believe that we were put on this earth as carnivores, but we became omnivores because we adapted when we weren't able to make a kill and hunt. And maybe we ate a berry and that berry was poisonous and we died, or we ate a berry and we lucked out and we found another food that we can tolerate. So I think that when you're young and you're growing up, your body does a lot of tolerating these things, but they build up over time. And it's only a matter of time. All of a sudden, you start having metabolic issues, medical issues, and cancer and diabetes and kidney disease. And to answer your question, my family thinks it's great. And they don't quite understand it, except the fact they see that I've gotten so healthy. But no one has reached the point. No one else in my family has reached the point of they see their mortality flash in front of their eyes and that I got to do something about it, either because they're not at that stage yet, or if they are at that stage, it's too late. It's never too late, but you've interviewed quite a few silver anniversary, if we may, some older people, and you've interviewed quite a few people that are older that just started. That couple in Sydney, Australia, that I think it was Sydney, Australia, or maybe no, it was New Zealand, and I apologize if I'm getting the two mixed up. But a two elder couple, and they started carnivore a couple of years ago, and their doctor couldn't believe it. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's right. New Zealand.
New Zealand. Thank you. So you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Even with what I, showing them, hey, look, am I not proof? But when you do go to that extreme and you heal yourself and you see that, it's a revelation. It's a revelation. You got your life back. You have your life back. It's amazing.
If someone came to you for advice about getting started with this, what would you tell them?
Well, I won't tell them how I got started, because you can put your big toe in the water before you jump in, and you can slowly get in the pool and dunk down, or you can just dive in. I dove into carnivore because I said, I did my research. I expect diarrhea, or I expect this, I expect that. And I know what I'm getting into. I'll give it 90 days. I have nothing to lose. It worked, and there was no looking back. So if I was going to give someone advice, and by the way, I've already coached 3 people. One of them failed. I gave them the information, and anyway, but the other 2 are doing great. Depending upon the person, I'll say, look, if it's too drastic for you, do this. See if you can cut your carbs back to under 50 grams. I mean, I should say 100 grams a day, depending upon what they're eating. If you can get your carbs, net carbs, under 20 grams, that's keto. Okay? Start with that. And then go to ketovore, which is under 10 grams of net carbs, and see how you do. But I guarantee them there's nothing like going 0 carbs. That's the ultimate, because you'll reach a plateau. And most people want to do it for weight loss. They don't want to do it. They don't have enough medical issues to affect their mortality or to see something. It's usually weight loss. And I give them a lot of the information that the infamous YouTube doctors do. I just mirror what they tell people. So, and I let them know I'm not a doctor. I like to think I'm somewhat knowledgeable and educated. But, and I give them those options. And then I'll say, look, I did this and this you see the result. And I give them a very strong dose of, if there are any negatives, they're temporary, and you need to expect you're going to go through this. And I overdo that part to get them over prepared. I overset the expectation so that doesn't cause them to lose their motivation. But when I went carnivore, before I went carnivore, I went up to 198 pounds from 168 because of some emotional trauma that I had in my life. That was partially job related and partially personal. And I was able to go from 198 and get back down to about 170, 172. And when I went carnivore, I didn't need to lose weight. When I made the decision to do carnivore, I was 170 or 168. I don't remember. And I wasn't even thinking weight loss. That was the furthest thing from my mind. Didn't need it. I wanted to get rid of my metabolic issues, my autoimmune issues, the insomnia that I was having, the brain fog that I was having. So to bring you up to speed, I'm 5'8". I'm not a big guy, 5'8". I went from 168, I believe, down to 143 without even trying. And today I'm 145, a couple of pounds heavier. And I think that's why my visceral fat has gotten to a point where it's really healthy. Dr. Sean Amara is like the authority on visceral fat, and I've been following him. So I still have somewhat of a six pack, and I'm pretty cut for my age, and I outperform quite a few people half my age in many activities. So I'm just pleased with where I am, and I want to be around to see my grandkids grow up. So, but to answer your question, yeah, I just tell them, you can go full bore and start it this way, or you can ease into it. But easing into it, you're not going to see the results as quickly.
So, Gig, is there any way that people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I have Instagram, and that's the Gig7, THEGIG7. I'm on Facebook, and you can look for my last name. By the way, my name is Gregory Irvin Goldbarth. My initials, if you take the first letter of my first name, middle name, and last name, that's my nickname, Gig. But you can look for my last name, Goldbarth, on Instagram. On Facebook. And yeah, so I welcome anyone to. But I do hope that some of your viewers will respond to my CAC score dropping that drastically to 0. I mean, how many people past 60 years old are 0? There are some, but very few. But to reverse that calcified plaque in my arteries, there wasn't that much anyway at one point, but I've never heard of such a thing, Dave. And I don't know if any Dr. Berry did comment on it.
People, all the time I get this question, can I reverse my artery plaque in my heart? Can I lower my CAC score? Here's Gregory. He's 70 years old. He had a CAC of 33 2 years ago. He's been eating a proper human diet between now and then, which is keto. I don't know where he's at, but a proper human diet is keto, ketovore, carnivore. He now retested. His CAC score is 0. Now, I bet he was doing some exertional exercise as well. You eat a proper human diet and you work out hard, get sweaty and out of breath, you never know what might happen, including a CAC of 0. Huzzah.
Congratulations on the CAC score.
Oh, man. And I hope someone can figure out why it reversed.
Yeah, congratulations. Awesome health results. And thank you so much for coming back on and sharing your story. I really appreciate it, Keith.
It's my pleasure, Dave, what you're doing for the community with the hundreds or thousands of people that you've interviewed, that's just that speaks volumes in regards to testimony to big food, big pharma. Someday people will stop listening to doctors and start listening to the actual people that experience this revolution, and you're doing that. So keep doing what you're doing.